Hello. If you ever have any difficulties with pain or stiffness in your foot, today we're going to be going through a few really basic general tips and exercises that you can do to help out some of that stiffness and pain in your foot. So the first exercise we're going to go through today is basically just a basic self-release that you can do for some of the muscles that sit on the bottom of your foot. So it's good for people who might be prone to things like plantar fasciitis or cramping in your foot. If you have a mobility ball, this is a lacrosse ball, you can use a tennis ball, doesn't really matter what. What you'll do is you're going to place that ball down on the ground, and then you can start to explore some of those muscles on the bottom of your foot just by putting some gentle pressure through them. When some people do this, they really focus on thinking about trying to grind stuff up or really beat up their foot, and that can actually end up making things feel a little bit worse than better a lot of the time. When I am doing any sort of self-release, usually what I will try to do is find a tender spot. Once I find that, I might just hang out there for a couple of seconds. One tip that I find really helpful is if you try to actually contract some of the muscles that you're on and then slowly focus on relaxing those muscles and letting your muscles kind of melt around whatever tool you're using for that mobility release. That can be a really helpful thing, especially for some of those muscles on the foot. What that does is that allows your foot muscles to relax, just using the ball as a tool to help to signal that. And we're not beating up the tissue that might already be super beat up. So this can be a really helpful thing to do in the morning or in the evening or whenever the day that fits for you. I also tell people I won't spend more than a couple of minutes kind of doing self-release on the foot or any other tissue. It just really doesn't seem to help much more than doing it for a couple of minutes. But adding it in a little bit throughout the day can definitely help with some of those tissues that might be kind of tightening up on you. Another stretch this time that can be really helpful for people who have stiff toe muscles or stiff muscles through the foot is starting to spread those toes out a little bit more. So when our feet are trapped in shoes and socks all day, they often kind of get cramped together, or all of those toes start to kind of smash together a little bit, especially if you have shoes that have a tighter fit around the toes. So one exercise or one stretch you can do is taking your hand and trying to place your fingers in between your toes. For some people, that might not even be able to happen if things are too tight, so you just kind of do the best you can, or you can use something smaller than your fingers to kind of go in between your toes to help to spread things out. If you are able to get your fingers in there and that feels quite uncomfortable, I would just kind of hang out in this position for a minute, 2 minutes, enough time that those muscles can start to relax a little bit. If you can get your toes in if you can get your fingers in between your toes and it feels not too bad, you can start to play around with a little bit of movement in your foot, kind of just rotating things around, trying to see what feels tight, what feels good. And same thing, maybe do that for a minute or 2 minutes, and you can do that a couple times throughout the day if you want to, or a couple times throughout the week, whatever feels good for you there. Another stretch, this one's going to be a little bit more intense, and so if you get pain with this one, you don't want to force it too much, but it can be an awesome stretch for the big toe. A lot of times people have issues with great toe extension or big toe extension. What that means is the ability for that big toe to kind of come backwards, which is a really important range of motion when we're walking or when we're running. So a stretch that you can do to help out with that is getting down into a kneeling position. If you can kind of prop your big toes right underneath your feet and then try to shift your weight backwards so that that big toe is coming up. You might feel that stretch right into that big toe joint, or you might feel that up into the foot. As long as that just feels like a stretch, that's awesome. That's a good position for you to then hang out in for, same thing, about a minute, 2 minutes. If you're finding that you're getting a lot of pain with that, sometimes if you try to shift your weight forward and just take some of the pressure off, that can be very helpful as well. But if it's tolerable, if you kind of sit back into your heels a little bit, put that pressure through, let those muscles that kind of go on the bottom of your foot relax, this can be an awesome position to start to build up a little bit of mobility in that big toe.